Good morning. Uh, to Tofino. Here's my retrospect. I've taken a couple stabs at this already, so this is a way overdue. I've been back home now for about 2 or 3 weeks. Yeah, I just summer happened and I got busy. So, anyways, I made some notes here about my trip to Tofino and back, and I thought I would take you through them. So I'm back here in my backyard gazebo where I started the whole YouTube journey. And I've had some questions along the way about my trip. Things like, would you do it again? What was your longest day? How much did it cost you in gas? So I thought I'd try to organize my thoughts here and do a bit of a retrospect of the trip. So yeah, so the total distance, 10,600 kilometers. Took me 20 days. My longest day was the last day because I was like a horse headed for the barn, heading home, and I did 960 kilometers. My shortest day, less of course the layover days that I had in Edmonton, in Victoria, and in Tofino, would have been the day that I think it was day 14 from when we left Comox and rode back to Vancouver in the rain. And that was 186 kilometers, including a ferry ride from Nanaimo to Horseshoe Bay. So in total, I traveled through 5 provinces and 8 states, obviously in 2 countries. So people ask me, what's the highlight of your trip? How do you pick one highlight when you travel from Ottawa to Tofino and back, out through Canada, back through the States? It's pretty hard to pick one. So I'll go through some of the highlights from a trip, just an overall trip perspective, and then I'll talk about some of the roads that I would really like to maybe do again. So let's start off with just some general highlights. So one of the big highlights for me was obviously having to have meet me out in Vancouver. That's the longest trip we've ever done on the bike together. Super grateful that she brought some sunshine with her and a little bit warmer temperatures. It was great meeting her in Whistler. We had a very brief visit there, and then of course touring the island and doing the ferry rides. So I think she got a good experience, except of course for the trip back out of Tofino where it was monsoonal rain. But yeah, so that has to be one of the major highlights. Okay, so one of the big things, like I said, was getting tours of the HMCS Max Bernays and the HMCS Ottawa. So the Max Bernays is the ship that my cousin's daughter is assigned to, and it's an Arctic Ocean Patrol vessel. I think I got that right. Not very heavily armed, relatively modern, and she's actually, I think, somewhere in Hawaii right now on exercises with other navies, I believe the U.S. Beside that ship was the HMCS Ottawa, which is one of our frigates, and she indicated to us it's the most recent frigate and it's 30 years old. So very cool. Stood on the bridges of both of these ships. Very humbling experience. What an opportunity. So thank you for those tours, young lady. You are an inspiration to both Dev and I. So the next thing, of course, has to be Tofino. If you've never been to Tofino, put it on your list. It's just a stunning, inspiring place to drive out. I've been told it's very rare to get nice sunny days there, but both times that we've been to Tofino, we've had pretty good weather, and this was no exception. We booked a lodge near Tofino called Middle Beach, and I believe it was room 30. The views were outstanding. The food at this place was over the top. Sure, you're going to pay a little bit for it, but you can't take it with you, so you might as well spend it, and it was well worth it. We had a lovely 2-night stay there in a lovely room with our own porch out overlooking the ocean. Enjoyed a glass of wine, watch the sun go down. Yeah, it was, I would definitely do it again. So after Dev and I parted, I made my way through southern BC and crossed over into Washington State at a small town in BC called Christina Lake. Unfortunately, the weather wasn't great. Surprise, surprise. But I had a lovely ride down through northern Washington State into Spokane. It was, a country road, very small border crossing, doesn't open until 8 a.m. kind of thing, and it was a really nice drive. Really, it was one of the big stops for me was Custer's Monument, so Custer's Last Stand Monument in Montana. It was sort of a dumb find. It was halfway along that day, and it was pretty. I'd always grown up with this and stories and Western movies and whatnot, but it put a different spin on it for me, let's just say. And it's worth a visit if you're ever in that area. Okay, so the next would have been Mount Rushmore. So it was cool. I caught it super early in the morning, and I'm glad I did, because based on the size of that parking lot and how busy it was getting just in the early hours that I was there, I'm guessing this place is a zoo in the middle of summer. When you stand at the base of it and you look up, you're like, is that really real? Like, it just looks surreal. It looks like it does in the movies and in pictures. Pretty cool. I'm glad I did it. And of course I made a wrong turn trying to get back out, and I ended up going around the backside because my GPS was taking me on this monster loop. Excuse me, I'm gonna sip my coffee. So I got to see some outstanding scenery. I'd go again only if Dev wanted to see it, but been there, done that. Pretty cool. All right, so let's talk about some of the roads and terrain that I really enjoyed. So, trying to think in order. So the prairies were cool, but windy as hell, and boring. So the road from Thunder Bay to Quetico, so Highway 11 along that route, very pretty. It reminded me a lot of Highway 60 through Algonquin Park, or more so like 509 up near Plevna where our trailer is. Twisty, turny, quite picturesque, and the weather coming into Quetico Provincial Park was pretty good. And then continuing from Quetico to Fort Frances was also fairly picturesque, but it was more difficult to see because, of course, I was sort of fogged in a little bit. But it's a beautiful road. Would I do that route again? Probably not, but it was pretty nonetheless. So getting out to BC, of course, coming into Jasper. Oh yeah, I forgot. Oh my God. Seeing the trophy that my grandfather made, touching it, and knowing that his hands made this thing in Jasper's Golf Lodge, and meeting the gal there that helped me kind of find it and take pictures with it, that was also a big highlight for me. See what I mean? Like 20 days, saw so much, it's hard to remember it all. That's crazy, and that's why having the YouTube videos would be great, because I can go back through them and watch them again, sort of laugh at myself. So the roads through Jasper down into the place that I stayed that night, which name eludes me, and then the next morning is the day that I was picked up the northern route of Highway 99, which I believe is called the Duffy Road. Unbelievable. Like twists and turns and up and down and rivers along the road, and if you live out there and you got a motorcycle, I think I would do that every month or every other week. It's just awesome, especially north of Whistler. As you get further south of Whistler, it becomes a lot busier and a lot wider and obviously more traveled. So obviously that was a big route. And Rob, my cousin, told me, hey, the mountains just look better through a helmet. 100% agree. Loved riding in the BC mountains, especially Highway 99. Okay, next highway. So the highway to Tofino, as I mentioned, it goes through some kind of old growth forests where the trees are the size of a house. And the road to Tofino in good weather is quite lovely to ride. And then driving around Tofino, it's just, again, it looks better through a helmet. Done it in a car, but never had the bike, and I really, really enjoyed that. So if I had more time, and it's kind of far away, the Sturgis area, like it's a 3-day drive from, easy 3-day drive from here. When I say easy, I mean like long. The Black Hills were outstanding, and I only caught like the tip of them. I think there's a lot of riding to do in South Dakota and whatever states south of it, which I don't know. But it was definitely the Black Hills. You can see why that big motorcycle rally in Sturgis, they have rides. They must go through those hills in the masses. Sturgis itself was kind of cool. Don't know that I want to be there during their bike week because I think it's pretty nuts. It was just nuts enough just being there off that period of time. But the Black Hills were pretty outstanding. I don't know whether it's a cool road, but it's worth mentioning. Interstate 90 through eastern South Dakota through Minnesota. I don't know that I've ever been on a road that is that straight. I swear to God, when they surveyed that, one guy stood up with a light pole at one end, and then the other guy drove 2.5 days with a really tall light pole, and they drew a line and they built the road. It is just flat and straight. In my opinion, it beats the Canadian prairies. And the speed limit's 80 miles an hour, so you just go. Of course, you have to stop, put rain gear on, but super flat. Do I want to do that road again? No, but I'd have to get to Sturgis or take some other route. But it's worth mentioning. I don't think I've ever been on a road that is that straight for that long. So the road north of Green Bay up towards northern Lake Michigan, where I stayed for my last night on the road, it's pretty. It drives along the lake. It's a little bit busy. The further from Green Bay you get, the quieter it gets, but it's a nice ride as well. I could see someday maybe doing like a Great Lakes shore tour around Superior or something for a couple of days. That would be a nice ride. So that's kind of the roads that I can remember that really stood out for me. So one of the things I cannot not review is the freaking weather. My co-host in this whole experience. So it wasn't unique to me. I think we're on track here in Ottawa to have one of the rainiest summers so far on record. But man, rain, wind. So the wind going across the prairies, I have never experienced consistent, solid wind like that. I've had gusts and stuff, but just never like a 70, 80 kilometer hour sustained headwind. It halved my mileage on the bike. And then there's a couple of points on the Yellowhead when you're heading up between Saskatoon and Edmonton, or between Portage la Prairie, Manitoba, and Saskatoon, where the road sort of hangs a northerly trend. So you're actually traveling south to north, and that means the wind's on your side. And I swear to God, I was on like a lean like this, just driving, trying to keep the bike in my lane. Top speed like 80, maybe 90 kilometers an hour, because when I'm into the wind, the bike is just working like a dog, and it sounds like a jet in my helmet, even with my earplugs in. So yeah, so holy cow. And the guy that I met in Manitoba just before the Saskatchewan border, he mentioned that it's not uncommon to have that across the prairies. So you better have a good flagpole if you've got a flag up in those two provinces. Man, that was windy. And of course, when it's raining on top of it, ooh, it's so much fun. I don't think I had one day that was really above 20 degrees Celsius. Most of my mornings started off, in the 6 to 12 degree zone. And I think one day I got above 20. And out of the 20 days, I think I had 4 days where I didn't have to pull out my rain gear and put it on. And, putting rain gear on, so when I would put rain gear on, I'd have my under layer of my Olympia suit, my riding suit layer, and then the frog togs over top. All of my riding gear is old. I forgot how old, as my boots completely disintegrated, and I ended up having to buy new ones. And and when you're driving in rain for that long, it just breaks down and you end up getting wet. And when it's wet and cold, that's when stuff gets miserable. I don't mind being wet if it's warm, but wet and cold, that sucks. So, the rain, you're gonna, like I always say, you're gonna go on a motorcycle trip, it's gonna rain. So be prepared. If you're gonna go on a bike trip, especially for that long, make sure you have a really good, relatively new rain suit. When I buy another Frog Tog, I don't know, I'll talk about that in a minute. So I can't not mention Montana. You know, I expected rain. Hey, when you go on a motorcycle trip in the summertime, it's the middle of June when I left, right? When I was riding, expect rain. Snow, on the other hand, don't expect that. What the heck was that? That was a white knuckle, 45 minutes through that mountain pass near Butte, Montana, when it was a full-on freaking blizzard. I wasn't prepared for that. I had been riding in the rain all day. My suit had sort of kind of soaked through in a couple of spots. I had thankfully changed my gloves out, so at least I had relatively dry gloves. But man, by the time I got into, was it Three Forks, Montana, I was frozen. I have to say I was borderline hypothermic. I couldn't even sign the form at KOA. I couldn't stop my hand from really shaking. The best part is my feet stayed dried. I got my new boots. I should have bought a new rain suit, or maybe a snowmobile suit. Who knows? But man, I did not expect snow. So did the weather get me down? Yeah, a little bit at times, of course. And you know, when you're always riding in the rain, it sort of takes a little bit of the fun out of it. But you know, the key moments in Vancouver, out in BC, going through the, I almost always had relatively okay-ish weather for those moments, and that's when it really, you know, so I look at that, and that's what really mattered. I did totally lose my marbles on the Interstate 90. I was just crossing into Minnesota. I was relatively good, and then, you know, you could see the rain coming. I thought maybe it was 2 days out because it was flat as hell, but no, it started raining in about 30 minutes, so I had to pull off the interstate, get onto an off-ramp, and then start putting my gear on. I almost fell over, and I completely lost it. Thank God there wasn't anybody around for about 300 miles, because I was yelling at myself, I was yelling at Mother Nature, I was yelling at my Frog Tog suit. I was totally coming apart at the seams. I did compose myself, got back on the bike, and kept going with my rain gear on. Anyway, so does the weather get you down? Sure. You just got to have the resolution that it's going to happen, and you just deal with it. And that's kind of one of the things about motorcycle trips that's good, right? It's just you, the bike, and your gear, and you just figure it out. So yeah, Mother Nature, thanks for coming along for the ride. Next time, you can stay home. Answer some of the questions around cost. So I got some numbers here. Total estimation is somewhere around $7,500, including the U.S. exchange rate for the days I was in the U.S. So I spent $1,200 in gas. I'm pretty confident on that number because it was all on my visa. My accommodations, were about $3,000, keeping in mind that, Whistler wasn't cheap, Tofino wasn't cheap, and Vancouver's never cheap, although they're shitty hotels. I spent about $1,100 on food. I didn't really, other than eating in Tofino at that lovely resort restaurant, I had pretty minimal meals. I brought a bunch of MERs with me and soups and stuff that I ate when I was camping. Yeah, so it really wasn't too much in food. And then miscellaneous, so $1,800 in miscellaneous, and that includes my bike service in Victoria, where I got my new Scorpion tire, which is still in pretty good shape. Include my new boots to stop at duty free, and I think my glasses, my hat. Yeah, so all told, it's about $7,500 for 20 days. It's about what I thought it was going to be. Yeah, it wasn't too bad. So I'll talk a little bit about my gear. So the bike. Since I've had this bike, it makes that clatter sound on the right cylinder. I had a warranty work done on it where they replaced a bunch of parts because they were just within spec. It made it marginally better, not really. And they just told me, hey, it's a Boxster engine, what do you want? So that's why I call it my John Deere tractor, because it sounds like a frickin' tractor. Clatter, 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 like a diesel. So I was, obviously worried about that. The bike didn't let me down. It ran almost flawlessly. I had couple days where I had problems getting it started. I'd come off the road, I'd go into the hotel, it would cool down a little bit, I'd get unpacked, get dinner, and then I'd figure, what, I might as well go fill up tonight so I can just hit the road running tomorrow Christina Lake would be one of those spots. I went over, filled the bike up with gas, and then I couldn't get it started at the gas station. It was like doo-doo-doo, and it really turned over quite a bit before it finally fired. So I test that to maybe bad gas. Maybe it was having a bad day. Maybe it was tired of the rain. I don't know. But other than that, it just ran. And I ran that thing good across the flatlands. Like we were doing 75, 85 miles an hour, no problems. And yeah, and it's comfortable, and the electronics on it are fabulous. All that traction control stuff sure gave me a bit of peace of mind going through the blizzard. So the bike's got about 62,000 kilometers on it now. And I'm gonna have to decide what I want to do. I don't like the newer GSAs because they've got their 1250s and they got this variable timing crap. So if that ever breaks, like I'm on a fixed income, I can't afford to fix that bike. So I don't know, maybe an Africa Twin, maybe something different. Maybe I just keep what I have. Don't know. But Mr. John Deere Tractor, thank you very much for getting me home. You didn't let me down. So let me talk about my LS2 Advent X helmet, which I bought just before I left. So I was right in between an X and a 2X. I did go with the 2X because when I wore the X for a couple hours in the house, I had some pressure points and I really didn't want to deal with those on a trip. Would it have packed? Probably. When it's in the up position, it is a little bit looser than I would like, but it's still like, it still moves my head, not the helmet kind of thing when you try to move it. And it's really comfortable, very comfortable. I wish I had brought the pin lock that came with it. Could have used that when I was in the blizzard and freezing temperatures every morning to stop the visor from fogging up. Never thought I would need it in June. So if you go on a trip and you've got a pin lock, bring it with you. But great helmet, really like it. I'm a big fan of the flip backs because it gives you that ability when you come into a town to just sort of chillax. So yeah, I really like the helmet. Had my LX4 BFM cheapo communicator on it, my Cardo system, my G9X Cardo sort of giving up the ghost. And it, you know what, for what I needed it to do, it worked great. I almost bought a new Cardo system before I left, but the comm system worked great. Of course, I bought the Climb Badlands boots. I think they're called Badlands. Anyways, yeah, they're not cheap, but you get what you pay for. And I love the boots. And I could probably almost wear them like as just like a hiker boot, but I don't want to wear them out prematurely. What else do I want to talk about? Let me talk about my Frog Tog suit. So the rain suit I have is when I bought it in Lake George many years ago. It is old. The Frog Tog suits is what we bought for Devon for the trip. The beauty of them is they breathe. Typically when you're on a motorcycle in the summertime, it's hot. So if you're hot and it's raining and you want to stay dry, the Frog Tog's great because it breathes a little bit. And it's pretty water resistant, but it eventually does break down. And it did that almost from when it's new, but now it's doing it much more rapidly because it's pretty much wore out. Putting it on and off and in the boots, catching it, it's all ripped to shreds on the bottom. So the Frog Tog suit is toast. Time for it to go. Will I buy another one? I don't know, jury's out. I might go down the rubber road, buy something you know, that is a bit more water repellent and a little more robust. So think about that before you go buy a rain suit. The Frog Togs are great, but if you're in cold weather and it's a couple years old, you're gonna get probably wet and cold. So think about that. So I've covered just about all of my points that I wanted to kind of review about my trip, except for maybe one. So folks say, Dave, would you do it again? Immediately I say no, but then, you know, I start thinking about it and maybe, I don't know, maybe I ship it out there, you know. I live in the wrong part of the country, but the Dempster Highway up to Arctic is definitely something I wouldn't mind giving a shot at. I don't want to do that one by myself, so I need to find somebody else who's got an adventure bike that would want to do it, that I can get along with, because Mr. Bill tapped out and sold his bike. But would I do it again? Probably. Not anytime soon. But this country has so much to offer. Taking the Highway 11 route, which is the first time I've ever done it through Northern Ontario, I'm glad I did it. It's nice up there. It's pretty flat. And not as flat as I-90 in Minnesota, but and you can certainly see why all the trucks use it. The prairies, and of course the British Columbia mountains. Like, what do you say? Like, it's just outstanding. So You know, it's going to be a long time before I do it again, and you know, I'm not getting any younger, but I'm glad I did it. You know, people also say, well, are you glad you did it? Absolutely. I had a lot of second guessing myself on the day 1 and day 2. I'm like, what am I doing? This is nuts. But yeah, would I do it again? Maybe someday, not anytime soon. And yes, I'm glad I did it. And then YouTube videos. So this idea came up literally 2 or 3 weeks before I was getting ready to leave. I'm not a YouTuber, but I thought, you know, what a great way for me to share. Because when you go on motorcycle trips by yourself, I don't know about anybody else, but you know, some of the best things in life are shared. And when you're by yourself and you see that really cool thing on the side of the road, you go, wow, that's really cool. And then you keep going because you got nobody to talk to about it, nobody to share it with. And when you talk to somebody later on and you try to explain it, they're like, oh yeah, cool. And they're like, hey, what about the weather? Right? You can't share it. So for me, it was a way of sharing what I was seeing when experiencing on a multi-day trip. And it brought me back a little bit because I have a tendency just to go, right? And it brought me to the point where I would stop at that Saskatchewan sign and take my picture before I'd say, hey, I'm in Saskatchewan, and keep going. Because I had to grab that in that video, and my GoPro is, you know, 140 years old, not very good, and so I'd want to use my phone. So it helped slow me down, and it allowed me to share it, and it really took on a bit of a life that I had never expected. I had, you know, friends that I used to work with, Danny, telling me, hey, where's your video? If you don't give it, if you don't put it up soon, I'm going to unsubscribe. I'm like, I didn't even know you had subscribed, for crying out loud. Then I had people subscribing, I don't even know who they are. Right? And then they start sending me comments like, your audio sucks. I'm like, sorry, I'm using my iPhone. And yeah, the audio sucks because I don't know what the hell I'm doing. But, you know, so my daughter's boyfriend is doing super well, and he works for a really popular YouTube channel. He's like, Dave, should have brought my wireless mic. I'm like, yeah, that's over my head, right? Like, anyways, doing the YouTube videos was challenging. You know, some nights you come off the road and you cook yourself a meal and you sit down in your tent and you've done killing all the bugs that are inside of it. The last thing you want to do is spend 40 minutes on your computer trying to figure out how to get the frickin' phone photos onto your computer and then use the software to edit it and then use your hotspot to post it. I don't even know if I went over my data usage or not, but I'm glad I did it because it was fun. Not at the beginning. You know, sitting here with nobody else around in my backyard talking to this thing that's in front of me, which is a phone, is not natural at all. So I got a little bit used to it, and then my wife had a great idea. She said, just pretend the phone is me, or you're talking to me. I'm like, okay, so Dev, I'm talking to you. Thanks for the idea of putting the GoPro on the helmet. I wasn't going to do it, but it allowed me to take footage that was relatively stable and share it, like when I was going through the blizzard. So the YouTube, you know, it was fun. Thanks to everybody who watched it and provided me comments. It helped me stay connected with my life back at home, and it was fun. Will I do another YouTube video, or will I do another trip? I will probably do another trip. Like I said, maybe the Great Lakes. I do want to go back to Minnesota and connect with an old work contractor I used to work with there. Maybe I'll go with a buddy of mine, Rick. And I will for sure do videos for that, just as 1-dayers or 2-dayers. You know, I'm not intending on doing, you know, a YouTube video for everything and everything under the sun. That's not me. But it was fun. Glad I did it. Enough said about it. Yeah, so now that's about it. That's what I wanted to go through. That's my trip retrospect. Again, thanks everybody for following along. Now I'm going to enjoy the rest of my summer, doing this, that, and the other thing. And you know, I'm gonna work on my resume and get it up on LinkedIn. If anybody's looking for a contractor to do stuff, give me a call. I don't want another full-time job. This trip helped me sort of get squared away on what it's like to not be working full-time for Bell after 36 years. And yeah, I'm just gonna figure this out one day at a time. It is a very strange feeling. But before it was strange and uncomfortable. Now it's strange and I wonder what's next. So I'll wrap it there. Thank you everybody very much. I gotta go.